Building budget gaming PCs is getting so fun again right now. With GPU prices here in the States absolutely tanking, building repeatable and easy to follow budget gaming PCs like this is now very possible to do. Now, it is important to note that these GPU prices are continuing to drop, so it may actually be a sharp move to wait another month or two for these prices to come down even more. But if you're a bit impatient and you've been waiting through this entire GPU shortage and you just want a baller gaming PC so you can start gaming with your friends right now, then I 100% got you covered in today's video. And speaking of being impatient, you guys know that I'm frequently trying to take care of my Discord and my Twitch moderators, and one of them, Grex, was really complaining that his Cooler Master keyboard was acting all funky, and he was just complaining about it and whatnot. He's like, hey man, you got any more of those mechanical keyboards? And I was like, bro, I got you, because today's video is actually sponsored by Corsair, and specifically their new K70 RGB Pro mechanical keyboard. The K70 RGB Pro is the next step up from their already award-winning K70 RGB keyboard with the aluminum frame, Cherry MX mechanical switches, super customizable per key backlighting, but now this Pro option adds a few new features to the mix. It's now rocking the Corsair Axum hyperprocessing technology, which enables your inputs to register up to 8 times faster than a pleb keyboard because of its 8,000 hertz polling rate, and it now also has this tournament switch, which allows you to switch to distraction-free static backlighting, and it also disables accidental macro activations as well, perfect for you esport athletes out there. This honestly probably doesn't apply to Grex because he's awful at Warzone no matter what keyboard he's using, but I'm still gonna send this to him anyway, and if you want to grab one of these for yourself, then just click that first link that's down in the description. Alright, so getting back to this build here, we're gonna jump straight into the parts list, and starting with the CPU, this here is the Ryzen 3 3300X, which we probably all know already is a very fast 4-core and 8-threaded chip with a max boost clock of up to 4.3 gigahertz, and I picked this up off Jawa for its MSRP actually of $130. Jawa is definitely gaining some traction, and as more and more people are using the site, there's more and more deals to be had over there. It's actually a really solid resource because not only are a ton of members of the ZTT community already selling their aesthetic AFPC builds over there, but for us PC builders and flippers, you can actually search by which specific hardware category that you're looking for, and it's now a part of my personal daily online suite for deals, and it should be on your list as well. Quick but important side note, please refer to this update here that I posted on social media last week about my relationship with Java, just for some full transparency. Getting back to the CPU though, the important thing to note about this 3300X is that it can definitely get beat by a tad bit cheaper Intel CPUs, but the really cool thing about it is that you can pair it with some ultra budget Ryzen motherboards, and that's still really tough to do with Intel motherboards right now. Now here's where I did run into a little bit of an issue for this build, which really delayed our production time for this video. I originally had this Asus ROG Strix B450-F slated for this build guide, as I got this on a really good Amazon warehouse sale down to just $44. Combine that with the $130 of the 3300X, and that would have been a seriously nasty combo for less than $180. The problem is that we later found out that the motherboard was completely bricked. I'm not exactly sure if it was the original CPU cooler on there that caused a short that maybe destroyed the motherboard, or maybe it just arrived bad, but either way, we had to make a quick change to the one that's in here now. This here is the Gigabyte B450 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi, which is still a really solid board, but I paid $70 for this one, also on an Amazon warehouse deal, and that pumped up my target price range just a bit for this build. I'm also definitely not a fan of these orange decals around the motherboard, which just throw off the white, black, and purple color scheme, but hey, sometimes this happens in the world of PC building, and you gotta be able to make these quick adjustments. And speaking of quick adjustments, we also had a different CPU cooler on here, but with the possible shorting issues on the motherboard and the mounting system and all that, we just honestly just had to get this build done, so we just threw back on the AMD stock cooler, properly rotated of course.
I understood that reference.
And with a 3300X, that's perfectly fine to do as well. Moving along though, we get to the RAM, and this was a fire deal, but you definitely don't have to try to repeat it. This is the YOLO Blade RGB 2x8GB kit that's clocked at 3200 megahertz, and I sniped this off a crazy Newegg deal for just $49. This kit is actually usually up towards the $70 to $80 mark, so it's not necessary for a build like this. Feel free to go with any clean 2x8GB 3200 or 3600 megahertz kit that you can find for around 50 to 60 bucks. After that though, we get to the SSD, and you're probably starting to see the theme here. I got this on another pretty solid deal, but this one may actually be repeatable. This is the Intel 660p 512GB NVMe drive, and these have been consistently going on sale over on B&H lately for $45. 45 bucks for a DRAM NVMe drive with some really good speeds is honestly really tough to beat right now, and I would definitely recommend seeing if that sale is live whenever you're trying to build your gaming PC. I've personally already bought 9 of them in the last month, and that's only because they're actually limiting how many you can buy right right now. Another part that I recommend you buy if it's on sale is the Asus TUF 450 watt power supply, and hopefully you've heard me talk about this unit already at this point. I actually talked a lot about it in just last week's video where I bought a Toasty Bros gaming PC build undercover, which is definitely worth a watch by the way. That video is also linked in the upper right hand corner. The Asus TUF lineup is not only 80+ bronze certified on the tier B list, which is really good, but they are also consistently going on sale for some really great prices lately. The other cool thing about this power supply is that you can make it look baller, which you've probably already noticed already. Inside the box, the PSU comes with some pretty cool stickers, but if you want it to really shine, you gotta do it the ZTT method. First up, you remove the original Asus TUF sticker that's on the side with the case's PSU cutout, then you install a white carbon fiber vinyl sheet, which I'll have linked down below along with everything else we talk about today, but then you custom cut one of the stickers so that only the black and white part is showing in this slanted pattern. You then install that small cut sticker on top of the white vinyl action, and this just looks so good in my opinion. I'm literally going to be using this power supply every chance I get from now on because of how good it looks. But now obviously this process is only worth it if your case has a cutout like ours does. In this case I've actually never used before, but it's the RaidMax F01 and I picked this up off Newegg for $60. This is also packing some serious value, just like all of our other parts. For $60 you're getting a full-size, decently airflow design ATX model here, and it even comes with 4 pre-installed RGB fans. These fans are daisy chained together via Molex, which I know some of you hate, but that's honestly a pretty overrated hate in my book, and at this good of a price point, I'm perfectly fine with it. Now, one thing to know about these RGBs is that they can be controlled with the button up at the top, but every single time you shut down the PC, it doesn't save whatever color selection that you already have, which means you have to cycle through all of these again and again every time you reboot the PC. It's definitely not a 100% deal breaker, especially if you do like the aesthetics of this case. One thing that's definitely not a deal breaker though is the Asia Horse cable extension kit, and this time I decided on the purple ones because I thought it matched up pretty well with the color scheme of everything else, and I actually snagged these two on a sale for just $16. Do keep in mind that even at their normal price of $26, it's still worth it. They're the GOAT for cable extensions, but it is important to realize that they go on sale quite often, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And finally, the last part is of course our graphics card. Sorry to keep you hanging on that one, but this YouTube algorithm likes when you stay and watch the video a bit longer. But this here is the Power Color RX 570, and I got this on a stupid crazy deal that I don't even know how much I paid for it. I got a huge box of parts from someone for $300, and it included this 570, a 560, a Ryzen 7 3700X, a 24G, 2 motherboards, 2 coolers, and even a power supply. It also came with 2 different sets of RAM, and honestly, I'm just going to guess that the GPU was around $125 worth of value, but in reality, I probably paid even a bit cheaper than that. Most of you that are following my build guides during this GPU shortage probably aren't able to copy my GPUs exactly anyway, but hopefully that changes here soon because as we know, things are definitely turning around and more GPUs are becoming available every single week. All in all though, this is what our final parts list is looking like, and as you can see, I paid just over $500 actually for my build, but like I said, I got some pretty good deals on this one. I definitely saved some money with my GPU, RGB RAM, SSD, and cable extensions, but you can certainly beat my motherboard deal like I just said, and honestly, you could save a ton of money if you went with a slightly cheaper Ryzen CPU if you're trying to make this a more budget build. But now it's time to test the performance of this 3300X and RX 570, so Sam is back in action with another benchmarking run for you guys, since it's still very relevant, but probably not for too much longer. We'll start off with Elden Ring again, and in 1080p with low settings, we couldn't get up to that 60 FPS mark, but it was still perfectly playable with 53 FPS. After that was Halo Infinite, and in 1080p with low settings, yet again, we got over that 60 mark with 63. Call of Duty Vanguard trailed after that, and in 1080p with medium settings, we got well over our target with 89 FPS. Grand Theft Auto 5 was up next, which really pushes our Ryzen 3 3300X, and in 1080p with high settings, we got an average of 104 FPS. Next up was Minecraft. Remember that you can check out our ZTT community server by joining our Discord or by going to zaxtechdrift.com/Minecraft for all the information, and in 1080p with fancy settings, we got 116 FPS. After that, Sam tested Apex Legends, which he's definitely still the GOAT for, and in 1080p with medium settings, we got 120. Getting towards the end here, we have Forza Horizon 5, and when using the built-in benchmarking tool in 1080p and medium settings, we got over that 60 mark with 66. In saving possibly the 2 most popular games for last, we have Valorant, and in 1080p with high settings, we got an easy 248 FPS, and finally in Fortnite's no building mode, which I'm personally a huge fan fan of, as are all of us boomer and already non-builders out there. And in 1080p with pro settings, we actually got over 144 for your higher refresh rate monitors with an average FPS of 148. And just like usual, we ran 3D Mark Time Spy, and this 3300X and RX 570 system got a score of 3,991. And also keep in mind that during our testing of all these games and benchmarks, our temperatures were getting a tad bit high with the GPU peaking around 80 degrees Celsius and the CPU at 70 degrees. We didn't have enough time to test this out to see if it was the case setup or that GPU very well could have just been used and abused and needs some proper cooling, but either way, these are still some safe temperatures to continue using for now. Definitely some solid results, especially considering that we had to swap out a lot of these parts at the very last second. But even if this $530-ish PC was a little bit too expensive for you, then click the video that's on the screen now for an even more budget build guide that I just made a couple of weeks ago.